Good morning, everyone. I hope you had that you enjoyed the evening yesterday. Before we start, only Berit will give some practical information for today.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I hope you enjoyed the tour to the City Hall yesterday. Today, for all the newcomers, we will give some information about the parallel sessions which will take place here or on the second floor or floor number 3, as we say in Norwegian. So press 3 on the elevator to come up to the second floor. And please remember to wear your badge at all the time when you're present, and look after your personal belongings at all time. Tomorrow we are going on a tour, a sightseeing tour. Unfortunately, they have said there might be some rain, but we hope it won't start until we are finished in the Vigeland Sculpture Park. But bring some warm clothes. And we will meet here at P46 at 9 o'clock. Eat a good breakfast before you leave. You won't have any. You might not have any breakfast before after 1 o'clock when we are entering the boat. You will be given lunch bags here before we leave, and you can eat them at any time, of course. But you can also eat them on the boat. On the boat, we will also treat you with the Norwegian favorite summer dish, shrimps, which you peel yourself. So we will give you a short crash course on peeling shrimps. That's what we do in Norway in the summer. After the boat trip, around 1 o'clock, we will continue at Bygdøy with the Kon-Tiki Museum and the Viking ships. So I hope you will enjoy that trip. Today is the last chance to sign up for one of our library tours on Friday. Those who want to visit the Parliament building and the library must sign up today. The other trips on Friday, there are still plenty of rooms for both the presentation of the Oslo Met Libraries and the National Library and the library at the University of Oslo. So remember to sign up at the registration desk. And there's a gala dinner this evening in P52, which is further up on the campus. We will be outside and show you the way. So, yes, I think that was all.
Thank you, Anne-Berit. The principal task for the Norwegian National Library is to preserve the past for the future. The library has big ambitions of being the premier source of information in Norway through digital access. They had ambitions to digitize every published book in Norway, and I think they have done it. This spring, the National Librarian declared that they would make a library strategy to cover all sorts of libraries, public libraries and research libraries. The National Librarian, Aslak Sira Myhre, has been the director for the National Library since 2014. He has a background as a politician, as a journalist. For instance, he had worked as a football journalist for the Norwegian Broadcasting Corporation. In 2006, he started as director for the House of Literature in Oslo, and that's close to where we are, which is Europe's largest and has more than 250,000 visitors annually. Myhre has published several books, and has published articles in The Guardian and The Washington Post in the aftermath of the terror attacks in Norway in 2011. And the slogan for this conference is Libraries for the Future, and that's just what Aslak Sira Myhre will talk about. Please welcome Aslak Sira Myhre.
Thank you very much, Lars, and thank you for the kind invitation to address you all here. First of all, I need to say that our ambitions at the National Library of Norway are far larger than what Lars mentioned. Our ambition is to digitize not just every book published in Norwegian, but every piece of material published for the Norwegian public ever on any medium. We have already digitized every book published. We have digitized more than 40% of the newspapers ever published in Norwegian. We are digitizing all the music, all the films, all the small print, all the journals, and in the end, all the commercials, all the porn, and all the magazines from the churches all over the country. So, in reality, what we are doing is to create a digital memory of Norway. I'll come back to that during my speech. For many of you, you are in Norway for the first time, and you will look around and you will see trees. Norway is a country filled with trees. Vast forests and vast woods, and trees in gardens and even at the streets of the capital. Even though Norway is filled with trees, if somebody in public debate would raise their hand and say, we need to save the trees, something needs to be done, my guess is that between 70 and 80% of the population in Norway immediately will say, yes, I support that. We need to save the trees. We need to save the trees and the forest and the woods. And if you were collecting money, people would contribute. If you wrote articles in the newspaper, people would read them and say aye. And if you were a politician, and I have been one, and you were going to debates and say, those who won't save the trees, we need to fight them. They are not responsible for the future. The ecology needs them. People will applaud you and boo them. There's only one problem in this picture. The trees of Norway don't need to be saved. On the contrary, Norway is growing down. If you look at pictures of Norway 100 years ago, you would see barren hills around Oslo. You would see barren hills along the fjords. You'd have to walk for a long while to find trees to woodcut or to build with. Today, you can't see the fjords because of the trees. Today, the wood industry of Norway hasn't anybody to sell their paper or produce for anymore because they have too much. Every year, more and more trees grow in Norway. Every year, the amount of wood produced in Norway goes up, and still we're growing down. So why then would people still want to save the trees? It's a cognitive reflex. You want to be on the good side. The side of the trees. You want to be on the right side, and it's something we assume. We all assume things all the time. And why do I do this and go this trip around with the trees? Because I think it's important for us, if we're talking about the future of the libraries, to think, do we make these kinds of assumptions about libraries? Do we make automatic assumptions, and do the public make automatic assumptions about the libraries? Is there a response like this to libraries? And my answer is yes. Clearly there is. And the first assumption people make, and I must admit I'm Norwegian, so mostly my experience is from Norway, and this might fit with the picture many places, but it might also not fit in countries very different from Norway or the Norwegian or European development. But still, I'm trying. I'm taking a chance. We assume that libraries are dying. Or people assume that libraries are dying. That libraries are soon to be over. Because of, and this is the assumption of the public, because of the internet. Because of Google. Because we can get our knowledge from Google and the internet, and we have it, libraries, the function of libraries will die. It will disappear sometime soon. We'll use our computer instead. I'll return to this point as well. But there's another place, not amongst the public, but amongst librarians, where there is also a kind of forest or tree assumption. And that assumption is, we're in a crisis. It's going down. It used to be better. Now it's bad, and it's getting worse. And this assumption, I don't know about you guys, but in Norway it's extremely strong. It's one of the things I fight the most amongst politicians and librarians, foremost amongst librarians. And this year I finally got some tools to fight it. Because people who think they're in a crisis and it's going down, it was used to be better first, they're not good. You can't create a future of a library based on it's going down. So I looked into statistics. And we do have quite a lot of statistics in Norway. We're librarians. We do make statistics of things. The first year, we have a general survey of the population of Norway asking, do you use a library on a weekly or monthly basis? It's the year of 1974. The 70s, as you know, were the heydays of the libraries. In the 70s, everybody were going to demonstration, they were reading books, they were doing culture and arts, they were radicals, they were ecological, they were good people, didn't have social media. They didn't do that kind of shit, and no, they were good people. So in 1974, 24% of the Norwegian population says we visit a library on a weekly basis. 24%. In the 90s, the horrible 90s, this figure was 37. In the horrible 80s, they were even above 80% at one time. It fell down to 35 around the year 2000, and today it's between 40 and 50%. The 70s were horrible. 60s were worse, not to mention the war. We create an idea about the past that is a lie. We create an idea about the past where people were swimming into the libraries, standing at the doors, wanting to be in the library all the time, going for knowledge and education. But we do not remember that, at least in Norway and the Western countries, this past was a past of class divide, where we are talking about a small fragment of the community using this, having access to education. The education revolution has changed this a lot. So suddenly you have 50–60% of the population taking higher education when you used to have 25. And those 25 were the library users, and they used the libraries all the time. But now we're reaching 50 because we're reaching a different audience, right? We're reaching out in different ways. So we have these assumptions, and these assumptions are not always a lie, but they are almost always making it possible for us to create good strategies for the future. If we don't know where we are and where we used to be, we can't make a path to where we're going. So, we don't need to save the Norwegian trees, and we don't need to save the libraries. But we do need to develop them. So then, what about the first assumption? Google, digitization, and all that. Doesn't that change the game? Doesn't that make us unnecessary? Well, I'm not going to talk a lot about that, because a lot of other speakers will and have done, and I think we've developed from the point where we're looking at Google and being dead scared and thinking that we're not necessary anymore. But we need to know something. As I said, the Norwegian National Library, as the first country of the world, tried to digitize everything. And we're also succeeding. We have a plant in Mo i Rana up north where we on a weekly basis digitize, I guess, hundreds and thousands of pages, 13 petabyte. We are creating a digital library in Norway. Everybody with a Norwegian IP address can read any book printed before the year 2000. It's OCR treated, it's searchable, whether it's a book for non-fiction or fiction, whether it's from Parliament or where it is, it's all accessible. In Norwegian libraries, all newspapers we digitize are readable and searchable, OCR treated. What do we learn from this? Well, much of the same as you learned and everybody else learns. This doesn't change everything. Actually, this doesn't change a lot at all. From two reasons. The book didn't die. The book's still around, right? Encyclopedias, journals, sources of knowledge changed, while reading for leisure didn't change. That's the basics of it right now. It changed journals, it changed access to enormous bases of data and knowledge, but it didn't change readerships. So people who want to read Elena Ferrante still want to read on a book in Norway, in the US, in the UK, in Germany, in France, in China, or wherever they are. So for a public library, which we are also responsible for, this is important. But secondly, and more importantly, having access to information doesn't mean that you use information. There's not a problem in libraries in Norway that we do not have digital access. The main problem in Norwegian libraries are people don't use what we have digital access to. People don't even know what we have digital access to. On my phone here, I can access right now more information than all the professors at Stanford University could 30 years ago. By the second I access it. What do I access? Actually, the football report from the World Cup. That's what I do look for. If you have had internet for about 20 years, 15 to 20 years, I'm pretty certain that if you had a browser history that went back to Alta Vista, and you could see how many different web pages you accessed on a normal day 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, the answer will be that 20 and 15 years ago, the variety was vast. Today, Google, your local newspaper, Netflix, Facebook, Twitter, yeah, that's about it. Wikipedia. 5 or 10 pages, that's it. That's it for all of us. Almost none uses the vast opportunities of accessing information. Who is looking for pottery from West Africa? Who is looking for feminist history in China? Who is looking for all the magnificent facts we can find about the world that can change our views of the world? Nobody. That's the truth. Unless Facebook points to it. Which means, what does this mean? It means digitization doesn't change anything. We still need to work. And actually, finding who we are, as I see it, is not reinventing ourselves. It's finding our core, our history. We do not need a Gates-funded project to look for the vision of libraries in the world and go through it by accessing and finding words and looking for what it is. We don't need it because the vision for what we are is created in practice, in what we do and what we have been doing for thousands of years. Digitization doesn't mean change the library. Digitization means find the core of the library. And what's in the core? Knowledge, of course. Arts, culture, literature, yes. But what's the function of the library? Organizing it? Yes. We are still organizing it. pretty good at it. Not that good, but all right. But I will give you 2 words who are the core of what a library of the future will do, and what we've always done. First of all, the function of the library is enlightenment. The function of the library is not the catalogue. The function of the library is not even the knowledge that we organize. The function of the library is enlightenment, whether it's a university library or a public library or a national library or a private library or whatever library it is, it's enlightenment. Enlightenment happens when people read books or access material that we hold. Our role in a digital world is to be what you call lighthouses of enlightenment on the internet or in the digital world. And what we see from what I just said, what do we access? It's needed more than ever. Because there are 2 ways to deny people information. One way is to keep the books behind shelves, lock the doors, don't give them access, prohibit it, totalitarian regimes, whatever. But the other way is drowning it. Dario Fo once said that. He used to prefer when he was put in prison for putting out his plays, and when all his posters was taken down by the fascists, and he wasn't even able to find somewhere to do his plays, because even though it was difficult, he was visible. Now, he said, just before he got the Nobel Prize, now nobody takes down my posters, nobody puts me in prison, nothing happens, they just drown me in commercials. Which is really interesting, because that's what the internet is. It's a massive flow of information, a massive access point where you need enlightenment, both in structuring the information and making people use it. Secondly, to do that, we need missionaries. That's my second word. In Norwegian, there's a word called formidling. There's no good English term for that. In German, it would be Vermittlung. Reaching out is the best I can say. Outreach. But to explain it, make people read. Make people listen. Make people want more knowledge than they knew they wanted. Give them what they didn't know. Our digital library, the National Library's digital library in Norway, is exceptional if you know what you're looking for. Because if you know what you're looking for, you can find the exact book, the exact journal, the exact newspaper, the exact article, the exact person. The problem with that is most people won't know what they're looking for. The library will. And the library will give them more than what they were looking for, because the libraries and librarians will be missionaries of enlightenment. Thirdly, we are hoarders. And we should be hoarders. We've always been hoarders, hoarders of books, then CDs and DVDs and all that, and now hoarders of digital information, of access, of journals. Hoarders in the way that we buy access, fight for access, get access, steal access. No, we don't do that. But you know what I mean. We hoard digital information. We hoard digital access. But that's not enough. We guide people into the hoards, into our heaps of access points. And this is where we might have to reinvent ourselves. This is where I would put up the big torch and say, find out, how do we do this? How do we make people use our digital sources? We know how to put books on shelves and display them. We know how to oh, you like this book, you could have this. Oh, so you're researching ants. Well, we have this. We know this, we can know this. We have reference libraries who can help any scientist with anything. But how do we make people get off Facebook and into the Lancet to find information? How do we make people get off stupid politicians or stupid people? social media for information and go to the sources. How do we do that? I don't know. I don't think you know either. But we're in dire need of finding ways to do it. The time needs us. This is the unsolved puzzle, to me at least. It's not about reinventing the library. It's not about digitization. It's not about everything changes. It's not a crisis. We're not dying. It's not all of those things. But the question is, how on earth do we make people get off something as potent as social media, as the present, to go into the past on the internet to find good sources of knowledge? The problem with the internet is it's there and now, right now. Anything on the internet competes with the present. Anything. And the present is always better than the past. You're always more interested in what's happening right now, unless you're a geek like me at least. You want to know what happens. And what does Facebook give you? Facebook gives you the updates of your friends. But what does Twitter give you? Well, Twitter gives you the updates of your friends this minute. A tweet that's 1 week old doesn't even exist. Even the Library of Congress have problems finding tweets 1 week old, even though everything is hoarded and stacked at the Library of Congress, because Twitter is made for the present only and not for the documentation of the past. And then what about Snapchat? It disappears in 10 seconds, 3 seconds, 12 seconds, it's away. Why is it so extremely contagiously potent? Because it's now. You can see what's happening now. It's the present. And how do we compete with the present? When somebody puts out some facts for you in the present through these social media, and we know that if you actually went into the Library of Congress, if you actually went there or these places, you would know what this person said a week ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. And yes, I'm talking about the President of the United States of America, as we all do now. And you would find that it's a blatant lie, right? But it's not just about Trump. We talk too much about Trump. It's about science. Fake news we're talking. What about fake science? All of the fake science that are selling us things. What about news? What did politicians say? What did headmasters say? What did scientists say? In all these questions and all the others, we need to find ways to make people access the real sources. This is digital outreach, and digital outreach is in its cradle. And I think the last, most important things for libraries in the future that will change is we need to be just as good with this as we are with books and physical media. And then at the end, this is very, very unpedagogic, but I'll end with a warning. There is a large warning sign, at least as I can see it, in the library world that's blinking. And that is the catalog. Not just because it's rotten, but because we tend to think that the catalog is us, that our job is the catalog. It is not. If libraries and librarians define ourselves by the catalog, either it's we use Dewey, or we use Mark, or we use even BibFrame, or whatever systems we use to catalog, whatever program we use, it's Alma or whatever, we die. We die with the catalog. The catalog is a tool. Yes, we've been training at library schools of how to use the catalog, but it's still just a tool. And when a tool is old, we throw it away and we find another tool that is better. And when people develop better tools, you don't become some kind of historical artifact using the old tool you used to have. And I know too many librarians who, when they search for something in the real world, they will use Google interfaces, visual interfaces to navigate knowledge and find what they needed in different ways. But when they're looking for books in the library, they would insist on using a blue screen catalog and you in numbers for finding the same, and that other people should do the same. People will expect to navigate in a library, in a digital library, the same way as they navigate through Google, Netflix, and whatever. And they will be good at it. And we need to be good at it too. And we need to adapt and change, not just from mark to bib frame, but from the idea that our identity is the cataloging, to identity of being the missionaries, the enlightened people, the people who know what's in the content of the catalog, and not just the masters of the catalog. And this is my warning sign. We need to move to the content. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aslak. I think we have time for one comment if somebody has something to say. I heard the agreeing humming during your speech. Are there any comments? Okay. Thank you for challenging us and inspiring us. So now we know that our job is to go out and make all the world to our disciples.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is my disciples, not yours. Snakkes. Thank you very much, Lars. Thank you, and good luck with your conference. Thank you for inviting me.
Good morning, everybody. While our next two speakers are getting their mics on, I'm going to do the introduction. I hope everybody's enjoying the conference so far. To me, it's been one of our best ones. I say that every year because they're always so good. I think this is the best conference there is ever. So, our next speakers are going to continue with this theme, and I think they might be able to give us some answers to these challenges that we've been facing. The title of their talk is a little challenging for me, but socio, econo, politico, techno, expialidocious, information literacy in the increasingly automated digital landscape. And this sort of reminds me of the Mary Poppins, so I'm hoping that this is what our theme is. Our two speakers are two very experienced information literacy librarians. Diane Connor, and who is now at Concordia University in Canada, so a fellow Canadian for sure, and has been around in a number of warm climate university libraries over her career. Our second speaker, or actually might be the first speaker when I really start to think about this, is Bethany Wilk, and she's currently the college librarian at Yale National University of Singapore College in Singapore, so she's still in the warm climate. So I welcome Bethany, I believe, is first. Thank you.
Thank you. So good morning. Diane and I are very pleased to be here today, and I must confess, also a bit overwhelmed by the topics that we'll be speaking about. But we imagine that many of us might be feeling the same way about these topics, so we felt that we should just dive right in. So we've recently been discussing, debating, and grappling with understanding how current socioeconomic, political, technological forces are shaping information literacy teaching and learning, as have others in our field. We're approaching this presentation with the ongoing belief that teaching information literacy, and specifically the critical examination of information along with its origins and pathways, is a fundamental part of librarians' responsibilities in the higher education environment. Not only do we work with our users to ensure that they are able to identify reliable information for scholarly pursuits and academic success, but also to equip them with the knowledge, skills, and habits needed to function as informed persons and citizens. So this is not only a significant responsibility, but also an increasingly complicated and often intimidating one. So both longtime fans of Barbara Pfister's work, Diane and I found her article, The Black Box Problem, particularly compelling and insightful. It really spoke to an unease that we've been feeling, and in fact, helped inspire our decision to tackle this topic today. So an accomplished information literacy expert and practitioner for over 30 years, Pfister states in her article that when she is wrestling with what she is wrestling with is helping students, quote, make up their minds when there's so much information coming at us, and so many machines are trying to make up our minds for us, end quote. And we are wrestling with this as well. In her article, Pfister describes works that provide strategies for checking the veracity of sources and sussing out propaganda. She notes recent stories referring to Twitter, Google, Facebook, bots, algorithms, and more. These lead her to question, what can we possibly mean by information literacy given the way we live now? To us, the most prescient part of the article is its conclusion. In it, Pfister describes how she is getting ready to meet with a group of first semester students. They'll spend a little time exploring the library and learn some things about the internet and how to recognize the kinds of information that they'll be expected to use in academic writing for the next 4 years. This is a quote. And she feels sheepish calling this sort of learning information literacy. So let's take a minute to read her concluding thoughts. So Pfister proclaims that in the world we found ourselves in now, one where we're being given personalized bodies of knowledge created by propagandists and bots and artificial intelligence, all locked up in corporate black boxes, I don't even know where to start. And frankly, we've been feeling a lot like that too. So this feeling of unease stems from, in part, the fact that we really are interacting with a new world of information. In this world, information is not only created, shared, and consumed by individual users, but also by algorithms, bots, artificial intelligence, and other technologies. So this is an exciting and fascinating world, and it is also mysterious and baffling. So for years, librarians have been working with students to help them develop strategies to critically examine and select relevant information for a variety of purposes and tasks. So we teach students how to identify scholarly works, select reliable sources, and how to apply the CRAP test. We have also explored social, economic, and political aspects of information as part of our information literacy activities for some time now. We examine ways in which information is constructed and valued. So some of the ways in which we do this are to encourage students to consider who might truly be an authority on a subject, examine the context of an information source, identify the corporate leanings of a particular website, and to be wary of partisan information and information that is laden with bias. But are these strategies really sufficient for preparing students to make informed choices about the information they discover, generate, and interact with? Do they empower students to be knowledgeable participants in our current information landscape? So we're now at a point in time when technologies underpin the social, economic, and political aspects of information. The ways in which these technologies impact and drive information discovery have great implications on the ways in which our students interact with information and therefore on our political discourse and practice. Are we, as information experts, truly prepared to analyze and assess numerous and complicated technological factors and forces as part of our information literacy activities? So today we'll explore these questions, as well as examine some of the technologies and mechanisms that are at play in the digital information landscape. We'll share some general approaches for expanding our information literacy discourse and practice in order to address the growing influence of these technologies. And we'll offer a few examples of teaching and learning activities that delve into these areas. So while there are many technologies driving this landscape, we'll provide a general overview of some of the major players and highlight some of the features that impact the way in which information is generated, presented, and also our interactions with it. In the article, Algorithmic Ideology, Astrid Mager states, quote, "Google is not just search. In fact, Google is not primarily search. It's advertising, right? Well, it seems that the commercial nature of information search companies has been recognized for some time now, and that the answer to this likely rhetorical question should be obvious. The commercial nature of search companies is still unclear to many." Oops. In a 2016 Stanford study titled Evaluating Information, the Cornerstone of Civic Online Reasoning, found that over 80% of middle school students couldn't tell the difference between sponsored content and an actual news story. And adults aren't necessarily able to tell the difference either. In their 2018 empirical investigation on search engine ad disclosure, which is a representative study of German search engine users, Lewandowski and his co-authors found that a large portion of Google users cannot tell the difference between organic results and advertisements. Additionally, only 60.6% of participants in the study named advertising as Google's only source of revenue. The ramifications of the commercial nature of information search companies, not only Google, but other major companies as well, extend beyond the interchangeability of advertisements and non-commercial studies. So companies continue to customize search and target customers through their opaque algorithms. So most of us do not understand the multitudinous amount of factors that are input to create algorithms that govern results ranking, autocomplete results, and searches that we will conduct in the future, in addition to other aspects of our search and information gathering. But much attention has been paid recently to those who do understand some of those factors, those people who are actually writing algorithms. So in a 2017 Pew Research report titled Code Dependent, Pros and Cons of the Algorithm Age, Justin Reich, executive director at the MIT Teaching Systems Lab, observes, quote, "Algorithms will be primarily designed by white and Asian men, with data selected by these same privileged actors for the benefits of consumers like themselves. Most people in positions of privilege will find these new tools convenient, safe, and useful. The harms of new technology will be most experienced by those already disadvantaged by society." End quote. While the internet may once have been presented as the great democratizer, bias, whether implicit or explicit, social or commercial, is an integral part of building search engines and the prioritization of the results that they generate. Recent books, such as Sarah Wachter-Bocher's Technically Wrong and Safia Noble's Algorithms of Oppression, highlight the influence that algorithm creators exert specifically on search. Noble states that, quote, "While we often think of terms like big data and algorithms as being benign, neutral, or objective, they are anything but. Algorithms are value-laden propositions worthy of our interrogation." End quote. So as we are teaching information literacy, can we provide our students with opportunities to interrogate and analyze these propositions as well as the information results that they generate? Like the commercial nature of search companies, digital footprints are nothing new. What is new, though, is the use of digital footprints as part of the increasing reach and range of big data and its applications. We may already know a few ways in which footprints are generated from activities like online shopping, liking an item on Facebook, GPS movements, sensor data, and fitness apps. These footprints contribute to the huge volume of data that is termed big data. The collection and use of this data is increasingly complex. Are we aware of the many ways in which data from our activities is mined and used by healthcare organizations, political organizations, higher education, financial institutions, and other companies? Do our students know? In her 2015 article, Plugged In or Tuned Out, Jennifer Helfrich states, quote, "For this generation, the use of big data has become so ingrained into society that students may have little awareness of its effect on their lives. Now we must make sure that students are aware that their digital footprints are more than what they find when they Google their names." End quote. Big data today is generated from and impacts almost all of our information interactions in the digital information landscape, sometimes moderated by user agreements and access requirements. In a recent Washington Post piece titled "Big Data is the Next Public Good," Bing Song states that, quote, "To say we make informed, conscientious choices by clicking a mouse or tapping on a touchscreen is a farce. A right without the opportunity to make meaningful choices cannot be called a right." End quote. How do we teach information literacy when making conscientious choices about our interaction with information may be a farce? Next.
Thanks, Bethany.
Sure.
There we go. Okay, great. Okay, so we like to think maybe that perhaps it was a simpler time once. There were producers of information, there were consumers of information. Producers could certainly be consumers, and consumers could be producers. But now, of course, there is a growing technological layer in between that has started to exert more and more influence over information flows. There has been a great talk about bots in our world of late. News bots, chat bots, social bots. I kind of think I know what a bot is sometimes, but then I'm not quite sure. So just very briefly, a bot, which is a robot for short, is at core simply a software program that runs automated tasks. Very helpful in many instances. The web as we know it would be non-existent without bots. You know, web spidering programs were really just bots. Or the gaming world would be nowhere as rich without bots doing all sorts of things in online worlds. Social bots are automated social media accounts that can automatically post content, and chat bots can automatically answer questions based on an underlying knowledge base. Again, these two can be very useful, I think, in a number of instances. But like algorithms, they are written by humans with implicit biases and or explicit purposes. Again, we'll quote a recent Pew Research Center report called Bots in the Twitter Sphere. In that report, it is noted that social bots can be used to, quote, alter perceptions of political discourse or manipulate online rating and review systems. This, of course, is relating to recent concerns about the proliferation of fake news and misinformation, both general and targeted. This particular study finds that although 66% of tweets to popular websites are generated by bots, which is quite shocking, these automated accounts do not generally have a political leaning, in this report anyway, which is not to say that one cannot find specific instances of such targeted behavior or that they cannot be used in such a way. Feeling a little like her today. There is a fine line between a relatively simplistic chatbot that answers questions based on a set of instructions and a knowledge base, and the promise or discomfort of true artificial intelligence. Whereas chatbots are much like algorithms in that they don't write themselves, we may be moving closer and closer to true machine learning, wherein massive amounts of big data provide machines the learning environment to go beyond explicit instructions. To use a common example, when we load 1 million cats into a neural network, somehow this machine figures out what a cat looks like. And researchers are not exactly sure yet how that happens. This is a true black box, both magical and exciting, but again, worthy of pause. So AI, of course, learns from big data sets, and big data sets also bring with them their own preferences and blindnesses, based on the data ingested and the data ignored, voices heard and voices unheard. Imagine the same example using librarians instead of cats. What would a machine learn about librarians? Or try it with a more controversial subject area, and what would a machine learn about immigrants, for example? The question we have to ask ourselves when we talk about machine learning is, what data sets are being input into those environments? What data is excluded? What data even exists or does not exist to be ingested, based on whose agenda or whose worldview? There are a lot of thought pieces out there these days on all of these topics, but generally librarians, I think, have not yet translated these ideas into our instructional discourse or practice. Please correct me if I'm wrong later. How are we going to do so? At the most recent LILAC conference in the UK, a panel debated, once again in my opinion, that sort of ongoing question of what is our purpose in academic libraries with regard to information literacy? Is it to improve academic performance, to prepare students for work, or to help people interact with information as informed citizens? Possibly all of the above, I would think, and certainly different at different institutions which have different contexts. With that in mind, we'd like to offer a few advocacy opportunities for our professional discourse and a few instructional ideas for our practice, just to leave you all thinking today. No answer. Somebody said maybe we would have an answer. Definitely not. Though it may seem daunting to become and remain knowledgeable about all of these topics with regard to technological innovation, Shorey and Howard, in their review article, Automation, Algorithms, and Politics, note that we can frame the technologies we've been speaking of today in terms of actions and outputs. So as a strategy for understanding, we can focus on the actions and outputs and not worry too much if the rest of it either is or seems opaque to us. Actions can be equated to the how and why algorithms or AI are created. How algorithms, bots, and AI are created may be by members of a dominant culture or by an elite few, and why they are created may be to maximize advertising revenues or influence political outcomes. We don't need to be technical wizards to talk about these things, nor to talk about them with our students. Ben Johnson, in his article, Libraries in the Age of Artificial Intelligence, challenges librarians to take a principled, yet forward-looking stance in advocating not for maintaining traditional librarianship roles, don't focus on that catalog, but in, quote, influencing the development of emergent information systems that may, in fact, come to replace us. He suggests we should proactively champion privacy rights in the world of big data and provide anonymous ways of interacting with technologies. He goes further to suggest that libraries and higher education could be much more active and could be creating open source and transparent AI projects, for example, so as to maximize the potential of such technologies while imbuing them with the long-standing principles of our professional mission. There is certainly much for us to consider, reflect upon, and act upon. Who knows where this world of automated information curation, discovering, and delivery may go? But we could have once said the same thing about this thing called the World Wide Web. And I believe that librarians were among the first to recognize its potential and pitfalls, and to get out there and teach students how to deal and grapple with that new information world. We suggest that it is time to do the same for this next generation of creation, packaging, and delivery of information. Bethany and I are not techno-geeks by any stretch of the imagination. We have increased our knowledge of this brave new world tenfold in preparing for this rather simple and cursory overview. We read a few books, a few articles. We did some reading, right? some Twitter, some social media things, some blogs, etc. But suddenly we felt quite relieved to find that we could actually extend our current knowledge, that it made sense in this new world as well. So we really want to engage further in this area with our faculty and our students. We want to stretch ourselves and our communities to think about the possibilities and implications of this new world. And in that spirit, we're going to close with just a few instructional ideas that we sort of, did a lot over Zoom and Skype over the last few weeks. Now, for those, I think there's quite a group of instructional librarians in the audience. We were at the special interest group yesterday. I'd just like to say, no proper learning outcomes, no assessment pieces. Please forgive me, just the big ideas. They still need some refinement from here on in. So we're going to just take a look at a few that we've come up with. The first exercise we call tracing footsteps. It simply prompts students to reflect on their information activity and discuss the implications of that activity. First step is to have students reflect on their digital activities over the past week or two, where they spent their time online, what they did there, what they read, what they liked, what they searched for or interacted with in any way. Then, in pairs or small groups, ask them to discuss how that activity might affect how information might get presented to them in the coming weeks, based on what they've been doing in the past week or two. We would prompt them to focus on information that gets pushed to them with no action on their part. We've all seen those Oslo hotels showing up on our feeds of late. But also to think about what type of more active search results might get prioritized for them in the coming weeks and why. So simple, but a way to get them thinking. Oh, who is Alexa? Who is Alexa indeed? In this activity, we would introduce our students to the concept of personas and how personas are used in product design and development, and then ask them to create personas for Alexa and Siri, for example. There may be other ones. We could offer some prompting questions or not, depending on the level of the class that you're teaching. But the questions could be like, what is Alexa's background story? What can she do well? What is she not so good at? What does she offer up when questioned? Where does she get her information? What really is her purpose in life? And then ask them how and why Siri's persona might differ. This gets students thinking about the knowledge base behind these systems and what is and isn't in that knowledge base and why. Obviously, what we're talking about here is Amazon versus Apple products, services, and partners. So unless somebody takes a moment to actually think about that and articulate it, we often we're just not even aware of it. Finally, we could ask our students to imagine a virtual assistant for their scholarly pursuits. Wouldn't they like that? I think they would like it. I think it might be possible. So we could ask them, for example, to imagine Elsie or Willie. And, ask them what company or group is responsible for this shiny new being. Bringing this conversation to the scholarly communication world can also help us talk about access to scholarly information in interesting ways as well, and who should and should not be the gatekeepers of such information. Last one. Finally, we'll have a look at data privacy, a hot topic in the EU of late and the rest of the world for sure. So starting again with a student's personal experiences, we might ask them how they feel about personalized shopping experiences such as Amazon. My guess is that most of us quite like this. I kind of like Amazon. It truly does offer me things I'm interested in, and I'm okay with Amazon using my Amazon behavior to suggest things to me. But that's me personally. You may have a different opinion. But what other data am I happy to share about myself and where? So we can ask students to think about that, but then also ask them to think about what a similar personalized university experience might look like, which again, may not be that far off. We could ask them to think about what information could possibly be collected and used about them in order to provide them this personalized university experience. Clearly, just basic information like their student information, their past and present grades, their use of learning materials, library materials, their campus activity, where they go, where they walk, what buildings they go in and out of, their study habits, their social habits, perhaps. How would universities obtain this kind of data? Would it be that hard? And how would they feel about that kind of experience? Might it be helpful to their success? I think that's clearly why anybody would ever even begin looking at such an experience. Or is it somewhat invasive? Would they have a choice if their campus adopted something like this? And again, how much of a choice? Finally, we can extend the conversation to a variety of other arenas: employment, insurance, elections. Again, the idea here is to have people open their minds to how their personal data might be collected and used, how it may contribute to that growing range of big data feeding back into those artificial intelligence systems, either with or without their explicit informed consent. So, we have focused our talk on technology a lot today, but you can recall our title was much broader, even though it was very difficult to say. I won't even try. On the whole, I think that most academic librarians anyway are quite comfortable, confident, and committed to including the social, economic, and political aspects of information in our instructional pursuits. And now we must once again more fully integrate the latest technologies into this discourse and imbue our information literacy approaches with the new normal. Recognizing that technology in the information world does not exist unto itself. It is itself a socio-economic politico phenomenon. So before thanking you, I'm just going to say that Bethany and I are looking for any new instructional approaches in this new normal. So please find us throughout the rest of the day or the rest of the conference if you have tried anything, if you're thinking of anything. We're very interested in hearing more from this very knowledgeable crowd. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I realize that time is at break time, but we probably could take at least a minute if somebody has a question or a comment right now. Yes.
My name is Jimmy from the University of Agder and the Norwegian Academic Library Association. I just want to lean in on the fact that this really starts way before we go to the search engines, and I find it a bit disappointing that our academic institutions are unwilling or seem unwilling to obtain basic knowledge about how the software that we peddle or push on our students basically is paying a company to give them our students' data for free, like Ex Libris or EndNote or Microsoft and all these things. And if anyone is actually interested in this subject, I would suggest that you look into the Free Software Foundation and Richard Stallman, because as long as we're just looking at the superficial top level of this, we're not going to be able to do anything about this problem. So, yeah.
Further thoughts? Enjoy your break. Thank you, Bethany and Jack. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen, for sharing. Right?
I think that was just the first day.
Oh, today is not sharing anymore?
That was so good.
Oh, good. I hope so.
And when you conclude that technology doesn't exist in itself in the social, economic, political phenomenon, information is the same.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's
Great.
really so good.
Thank you.
I mean, with Oslo first giving some problems, you took it down and solved them.
appreciate it. Very sweet.